oversee all 13 departments in the town, and just wanted to thank you all for the invite today. I'm thrilled to be here and looking forward to hearing all about your project. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joe Aberdale. I'm the DPW Superintendent at Great Barrington. I oversee the wastewater treatment, the roads, the buildings, the grounds under Mark. I've been in the position about a year. I come from the private sector, building bridges and projects and buildings all over the Northeast, New York, Pennsylvania. So I'm slowing down, come to Great Barrington, where I've lived and gone to school here.
We're both graduates of Monument Mountain, so this is like a homecoming for us.
Awesome.
Driver safety. Oh wait, yeah.
We're just gonna go around and introduce ourselves.
I'm Addie.
I'm Josiah.
I'm James.
I'm Cam.
You guys can introduce yourselves too. You're part of the program.
Yeah.
I'm Gunby.
I'm Shiloh.
I'm Barrington.
I'm Alex.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Gabriella. I'm Janine. I'm Max.
I'm Katie.
And America.
No. Driver safety in Great Barrington.
Oh yeah. About us. We are a group of incoming 9th graders going to Monument Mountain Regional High School. We all attend a Project Connection program that is strongly focused on becoming safe drivers and learning how we can make our community safe.
What we'll be discussing today. We're going to start with the overview, which Josiah will do. Then we're going to go to who we interviewed yesterday. Then to crosswalks and about crosswalk safety. The problem areas in Great Barrington where most drivers found they had trouble driving. Then the bike lanes and how bikers feel about biking on the roads. And then we're going to summarize it all.
So an overview of what we were doing yesterday. The Project Connection program went out to Main Street in Great Barrington, and we asked people's thoughts on how speeding issues and how it's affecting pedestrians and biker safety throughout the community. And a lot of people were talking about how they have a lot of thoughts on how they don't know if it's super safe for the bikers right now because of the lanes, and they were also talking a lot about how all the speeding doesn't make them feel as safe. And so in the picture, this is actually one of the interviews that I was doing. The lady wishes that there was more cop presence, a traffic cop on Saturday during farmers markets between the pedestrians and the people looking for non-existent parking. It's a driving nightmare for people and cars and scary for people trying to cross the roads. Where's our switcher?
We asked about 125 people in the town to complete our survey, and 89% of them were white. 34% were between the ages of 45 and 54, and 91% commute by cars on a day-to-day basis. And we surveyed a wide variety of people to capture a vulnerable insight from different age groups, backgrounds, and more things.
The crosswalks are a major point of conversation whether people are not using them and crossing in the middle of the street or cars not stopping for people. What we can change, we can more clearly mark the crosswalks with lights and signs, and will that make a difference? 56.8% of people would like crosswalk lights, and they think it would make a large difference in safety for pedestrians.
The problem areas in our town. One question that we asked the people we interviewed was, what area in Great Barrington would you feel unsafe driving in? The main ones that they talked about were the new traffic circle, downtown Great Barrington, and on the exit of schools, especially Monument Mountain. One of the person we interviewed said the area from Bachelor Square to the Rotary is consistently congested due to unsynchronized traffic lights, and pedestrians not using the crosswalks properly. This makes me avoid driving through town using any other route.
I just want to add to that really quickly. We also talked to the chief of the police station in Great Barrington, and he also brought up how the traffic circle, the new roundabout, has caused like a lot of like traffic, and people don't really know how to specifically use it, so it's causing a lot of problems in Great Barrington, like people just driving through, or people getting stuck in traffic, or like people going out when they're supposed to be coming in. But we did talk to the chief of police, and we talked a lot about that. How safe is biking? This is one question that we asked people, and we genuinely got the same answer, and people were just saying how they think it needs to be safer. Problems that we heard a lot about were people thinking that we needed larger bike lanes, more bike lanes, and bike paths. Something that someone actually said is, in Great Barrington, a narrow bike lane is an accident waiting to happen, making chaos in traffic. I would like to see wider paths, then we can have some security. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and we edited a picture of Mark on a car because we heard that this is his favorite car and he used to talk about it all the time, so we thought it might give a little giggle.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, good job.
I love it, thank you.
Love it, Joe.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice job.
And feel free to ask any questions. Anyone? Questions?
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 Anyone?
All right.
Alex?
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So the survey, we will share the results of the survey with you as well. So I noticed that it's still posted. It was posted yesterday on the Great Barrington website, and then I also had when we started this, the English as a second language family liaison from our district noticed, and so she asked if she could create a survey as well in Spanish and send that out to the Spanish-speaking families within our district and our community as well. And so we'll share both of those survey results with you, and you'll likely continue to get survey data for the next week or two, probably, as it remains open.
Pedestrian safety is a subject that we talk about frequently at select board meetings and priority planning meetings. And it's something that we're working really hard to address. In fact, we have a crosswalk safety program, project I should say, getting underway this fall. And I'll let Joe elaborate on that, but we're looking forward to putting some new safety measures in place that might help some of the concerns that you brought up this morning. And we're certainly open to trying out new technologies and looking at other options for improving safety downtown. So I'll let Joe, if you don't mind, just talk about the upcoming project.
Sure. So back a few years ago, Great Barrington redid the Main Street, and we put new sidewalks in and everything, planting beds and stuff like that. And since that was done, there was like 9 locations that there were issues from pedestrian safety that were identified. So that's one piece of the project, that those 9 locations will be reconstructed and redesigned a little bit. It's all designed, it's already been bid. It's slated to start right after Labor Day. Through the main crosswalks in town, which is across from Rotary Way, which is right next to Gorman Norton's and the Cheesemonger, just in the car hardware area. And the next one down south is the one at Railroad Street. We're going to put a textured crosswalk system in with pedestrian activated flashing lights. Because we recognize the same thing that you guys all did too, that pedestrian safety, the highest used crosswalks. But we also got to remember too is pedestrian safety is very important, but every time someone crosses that road, it stops traffic too, which you touched on there about one of the persons you interviewed, how it's a nightmare to get through Great Barrington at times. So it's a tough balance all the time. We want the people downtown, the businesses want the people downtown, we want people going through town, but people sometimes avoid town for those reasons.
Can I ask what a textured crosswalk means? You said
Sure.
textured
You may see them in Lee or in Lennox. It's basically a blacktop of colored asphalt that they put an imprint into it.
Like a
So-
brick
So
pattern.
it'd be like a brick pattern.
Yeah.
And this way here, when, you know, it's traction for the pedestrians. And, you know, it's more visible, it'll be colored, so it'll stand out a little bit. Main Street is a unique street. It's actually a state numbered route, but it's owned and maintained by the town of Great Barrington. So there are certain limitations on what we can and can't do on that street. The state owns it up to the south side of the Brown Bridge, the bridge by Domaines. The town,
Red Bridge.
the Red Bridge now.
Yeah.
It takes over, we take over there, and we take the ownership of the Main Street all the way to the town line down to Sheffield. So, you know, the roundabout's in the middle of that, the state comes into that on 23. So there's always moving parts there. So I think we take pedestrian safety very, very, very serious. And hearing your points of view are reassuring, because you're picking up on what we're doing, you're telling us a little bit more of what you're seeing. But, you know, I don't know if you want me to continue a little bit.
Yeah, keep going, sure.
There was a mention in there about synchronization of the lights. The lights are actually synchronized. The one down by the Red Bridge is not, but all the other ones through town are. So what happens is, you know, they talk to each other, so when one's on a cycle, it sends a signal to the other and it synchronizes them that way. But as soon as someone crosses the traffic and stops traffic, the signals see it and it messes them up, so it's got to resynchronize. So we can't control the people crossing the road when and how, and hopefully they're using the crosswalk, some don't. But that causes quite a problem. And with the synchronization of the traffic signals, there's one right by Car Hardware where you're coming out of Elm Court, or Elm Street, I think at that point. Elm Street, between Berkshire Bank. Every time someone pulled up to that to take a right on red, which in Massachusetts is legal, you can do right on red after you stop, it would still stop traffic. So someone pull up to do a right on red and trip the signal, and meanwhile it stops it, the car's already gone because it did a right on red. So we altered the programming of the sensors. You see these little cameras on top of the traffic signals. Those are actually zones looking at the pavement and detecting when cars come into it. And we can adjust the timing on how long people have to wait or how long it trips. So we adjusted those, and it really increased the flow of traffic going south. In Great Barrington, it seems the traffic going south is the bottleneck. The traffic going north seems to flow with less of an impact. And I'll touch on another item you mentioned with the roundabout. And I think the traffic going north, the relief of the pressure is because of the roundabout. You think about the roundabout, it doesn't stop people. It keeps traffic moving slowly and fluid. Where a traffic signal stops people, and then it sends a surge of people. So if you were sending surges of traffic like it does going south into town, you get these surges that bottleneck up. Where the roundabout, it really eases the congestion in town going north. People, there are rules to roundabouts, and even this morning when I was down there, the guys were planting the circle this morning. There's people blowing horns at each other, and you can clearly see they're not yielding the right of way like they should. So roundabouts are a good thing if they're used properly. And a lot of the accidents that have happened were due to people speeding, people under the influence, you know, people that should have been driving anyways.
I think over time,
it's gotten substantially better.
yeah, people will
Yeah.
learn how to navigate a roundabout, and it will improve traffic flow. But it's going to take some time. It is a somewhat new concept for drivers to navigate, but we are seeing some improvements over time. Fewer accidents, better traffic flow at that end of town.
It's funny, I remember when we first, in the town that I reside in, there was a roundabout that was brought in, and it was very similar to this.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of the situation here where it was difficult at first, but then as people got used to it, it did help it helped the traffic flow on this main road called Sand Creek Road down in Colony. But it took a little while for people to get used to the change, and change is hard to get used to. You know, as humans, it's something that we all fight with. So, you know, over time, people get used to it. I think people will learn, and yeah, we'll see the value there.
We've been working with some school officials over the past couple of years to try to improve the entrance and exit to this property as well, which is one thing that you mentioned in your presentation as being an area of concern for some drivers. And I think we've made some progress out there with the additional buffered turn lane and some of the technology that you're seeing out there as far as the conflict warning systems that were put in fall, summer. But I think there's opportunities for improvement out there still. And that may even be perhaps another roundabout at the intersection where Monument Valley meets Route 7. We actually have data from Mass DOT that shows that more accidents actually happen at that light than do at the entrance and exit to Monument. So one of the things we talked about with school officials was over time, and probably during the campus renovation project, having all traffic exit out to Monument Valley Road, and at that time that may be an opportunity for us to put another roundabout in place to bring the speed down of traffic coming into and out of that area and reduce the number of accidents.
When so the students here did a phenomenal job this week of putting the survey together, collecting the data, and then analyzing the data. I'm just curious if you could let them know kind of how that survey data will be used moving forward, and what that might mean for both of you.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is share the information that we receive from you, the information you collected in conversations on Main Street and through your survey, with our police chief. Joe, fortunately, is here today and can hear it firsthand, share it with our select board. And as we move forward with future projects for Main Street and the areas just outside of Main Street, it will be incredibly helpful to us to put that into our designs and use that as a way to improve traffic flow and safety downtown. It's certainly a concern. It's something that we'll be working on for many years, one step at a time. And any input we receive from students, from residents, from visitors is all really helpful. One of the things we do twice a year is meet and talk about what our priorities are for the coming 6-month period. And crosswalk safety, pedestrian safety, and biker safety, those topics come up over and over and over again. So this is really, really helpful to us. We'll be meeting again in January, so we'll be taking this information to everyone that's at the table at that time.
Ryan, we also had another, we were talking with the group that I was with in front of the post office. Mm-hmm. That was that seemed to be another, an area of concern where it merges into one lane and everybody's trying to, speed up to be in front. And then there's the crosswalk that's right there. So I noticed a lot of people didn't notice the pedestrians crossing because they were busy trying to merge.
Beat the car next to them.
Then there's people, coming out of the library trying to merge into the traffic.
Yeah.
So I think there were a lot of pedestrians that actually had to stop in the middle of the road because the people who were driving were not paying attention to the actual people who were pedestrians crossing
one
there.
Thing at a time.
Yeah, I know.
For
There's
pedestrians
a lot of factors in that one particular area going north. So.
it's a tough solution. You know,
Yes.
you got 2 lanes on Main Street, you're coming down to 1. You go the other way, you're going from 1 lane to 2 lanes, there's no problem there. Everyone just expands out.
Yeah.
But I think one of our former selectmen had some ideas that, you know, we're considering maybe different types of line striping, you know, paintings on the roadway, you know, merging better identification. As you approach the roundabout, we run into the same thing. If you're going south and then the roundabout, like towards a big Y, you're going from 2 lanes and it's coming down to 1 lane, the same thing. It's not complicated there by crosswalks, but you have the same merging issue when you hear the people blowing the horns and an accident occasionally. So there's signage and line striping, you know, and symbols on the road that can help. The thing is, like, even the roadways, and you talk bike paths and stuff like that, whenever we're looking at redoing a road in town, you know, we have like 100 miles of road in the town, so it's 100 miles times 2 lanes. You know, they have to be upgraded, they have to be, you know, rebuilt, they need new drainage, things like that. We're always considering, what about a sidewalk, what about a bike path, you know, things of that nature, which, again, all cost money, which our hands are always tied on money to some extent. But if you go back years, you know, when there weren't cars on the road, when there was horse and carriages, or when cars started, some of the roadways that the town owns are very narrow. So to get 2 lanes in there at the minimum required widths, put a bike path, put a sidewalk, you probably are talking a roadway of 50 feet. In some areas of town, we're lucky if we have 30 feet to try to squish all this in. So it's things we try to do. You know, there's ways to take people's land, which no one ever likes doing that. But, you know, we do try to consider the bike paths as things that everyone's looking for.
Anyone here a biker that frequents Main Street in Great Barrington? Yeah. What's your experience as a biker?
Well, from someone who grew up near the city, for me it was easy to navigate because I'm just alert at my surroundings. But someone who is not so familiar with the area and might be on vacation, it might be a little bit more difficult. But on the other hand, going back roads, it's very hilly. So, you know, you have to weigh, you know, and they don't have any shoulders.
No shoulders, often.
You know, so, you know, so there's a difference. A lot of people, I notice, who do bike recreationally in town, they don't wear helmets, as opposed to people who, you know, are a little bit more doing it for physical activity. They'll have, you know, helmets. So that's also another factor of safety that, you know, that people will just have to be, you know, aware.
Yeah. Interesting.
Do you guys have any questions for the students around anything that happened throughout the project, or anything that they could do also maybe to support in the future?
The information is really helpful. This is really great for us to hear your feedback and your observations. This is something we don't necessarily have the time to do, which is get out on the street and talk to the people that are actually using Main Street. We do hear from people from time to time at our board meetings, but it's a relatively small number of people that are actually on Main Street every day. You know, anything you can do to continue to collect information for us, provide feedback from the folks you're speaking with would be really helpful. I'm just kind of curious, was there anything that surprised you in your findings out on the street? Personal observations or feedback from the folks you interviewed?
There was one guy that kept going back and forth past him.
Kept going back and forth?
Yeah, past our thing.
Oh, yeah.
I just
And I
walking back
asked
and
him like 3 times.
Was he interested in providing any feedback, or just
He was not interested.
no? Any other interesting feedback or?
One of the questions on the survey was if the crosswalks should have crossing lights.
Mhm.
Those buttons that you press and it says like crossing now. And I thought it'd be very clear, like everyone would want more,
Mhm.
but at least half said, no, I think we have like plenty. Like, I don't think we should have that, it just stops traffic,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting.
And we're gonna put those in the two busiest crosswalks in town.
Mhm.
And one of the crosswalks, as you go down Main Street across, right at the railroad street, the road is the widest at that point, so we're actually in the center. There's gonna be another light and a place that's curved off where the pedestrian can actually stop.
Oh, really?
You know,
Okay.
so if,
Like a little island.
yeah, a little island, so, you know, if you're going across, or an older person that needs to take a break,
Mhm.
you know, and then there'll be another button there if they want to push it again to continue.
Okay.
So, you know, just trying to consider all those type of things. Adding lights, you know, it's not always pleasant looking either.
Right,
you know.
right.
But I think one thing in my past, you know, not only have I been an engineer for years, but I've also owned a business in town. And one thing I've learned is if you hear someone say something to you once, you listen. If you hear it 2 or 3 times, it's an issue. So what you people heard, and if you heard the repetitive comments from people about the crosswalks, the bike paths, it's something that you should learn to perk your ears up and listen, because that's just a small sampling, and you've got multiple people, I'm not saying complaining, but giving you feedback. You know, we get that at town hall all the time. Someone calls and says something, okay, we'll look at it. And 2 days later, you get the same call again from a different person. You probably got an issue you got to go address. So I think you picked up on that with your survey. And so going forward in life, that's a good thing for you guys too. I think maybe you could see crosswalks aren't the safest. So hopefully all of you take away from this, it's like when you're crossing Main Street, you do have the right of way, but you still need to look and protect yourself. You know, because sometimes you'll have a tractor trailer stopped and let you cross, and someone going up the other side of the tractor trailer not looking, and you could get hurt. So I think if you could all walk away with that and bring it home to the family, you do have the right of way, but it's always good to be on your toes.
I had a question about the texturization of the crosswalk. I'm wondering, as someone who works with people who have challenges with, you know, walking or wheelchairs and things like that, is that going to hinder people from
It shouldn't.
crossing or slow them down in any way?
No, it shouldn't at all. You know, like some of the crosswalk areas, when they get redone, they have a little textured pad with the dimples on it. You know, that's really for, you know, the handicapped people of some sort, so they know where they are, they could feel it, they get a grip on it. It's the texture is less than that. And like if you do go through Lenox or Lee, they do have similar. You'll see it. But it's decorative, but it's not. It won't interfere.
One of the things we learned a few years ago when we were launching our Rainbow Crosswalk project was that the Main Street crossings were subject to federal rules and regulations, so we weren't able to change the color. They had to remain white, which is why when you drive down or walk down Main Street, you'll see that the side streets that are owned and operated by the town have rainbow crosswalks, and the Main Street crossings are just white stripes. One thing we learned during that process was that the only way the federal regulations would allow us to actually put something brighter on the crosswalks would be to texture them. So if you texture the pavement, you are then open to a number of options. So that's really important to us. I think that having a bright color across Main Street really brings attention. You know, there's 4 lanes of traffic, 2 moving in each direction. There's a lot happening on Main Street. There are delivery trucks and people crossing, and you know, we thought if we could bring more attention to the crosswalks, that maybe that would help. So we'll see. That's the direction we're headed in.
I want to open it up and see if anybody has any other questions for Mark and Joe, or any follow-ups, ideas, concepts, things you noticed.
I did ask Ryan earlier if anyone in the room was a driver, and from what I understand, no one's driving yet, and will be soon, but I'm assuming you are coming in and out of the entrance with a sibling every day or with a parent, and I'm kind of curious what your observations are about navigating the entrance and exit to Monument. Anything that you've picked up on that might help us improve safety at that location?
This didn't come from one of my parents, but one of the people that we interviewed yesterday on Main Street said that they would like a light or more signage at the entrance to Monument or the entrance to like either one of the other schools.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question about the timing of the slowdown of speed. What time of day, during the summer hours? I noticed that it goes from 55 to 35.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just a certain time of day, or or are you just supposed to slow down? Because I noticed it'll tell you to slow down. You have the light,
Yeah.
the flashing light. It'll tell you you're going too fast.
I believe they are on timers. I just don't know exactly what the time range is. That's actually a state highway section, so it's out of our jurisdiction.
And that's why you can't put the light in, right?
Right, but we do meet regularly with officials from Mass DOT, and we work with them frequently. So we are able to have some input on what does happen out there, which is the conflict, intersection conflict management system that was installed was a result of one of those conversations.
Mm.
So we could certainly find out what that time range is.
I'm just
but I don't
wondering
know.
if you can maybe have signage, between, 7 and 4 or 7 and 5, this area from here to here is 35 miles an hour. Because I don't think people realize that you do have to slow down,
Yeah.
Even though it's a school.
They're still driving through at 50, 55 miles an hour.
Yeah. And so for students to be able to get out safely, if officers are elsewhere on a different call and not able to guide the students out or the staff out, I think that's allowing people to know that this is it's 3 o'clock. We're letting students out, and it's going to be a lot more congested. So just take your time.
We do try to have a police presence here as much as possible. That's challenging because Stockbridge, West Stockbridge, and Great Barrington, we all have a limited number of patrol officers on the road at any time. So one call can tie up an officer for that 15, 20, 30-minute window when somebody would normally be here, unfortunately. The other concern for us is that we want to be mindful of the officer's safety as well. So having an officer standing out in the road in a stretch of road that is sometimes 50, 55 miles an hour and sometimes 35 is also challenging.
I do notice that is very helpful in alleviating some of the congestion, especially in the morning and at night. I mean, not at night, in the morning and in the afternoon when school lets out. Because it can be scary, and you'll all, many of you will notice that as you start to drive, pulling in and out of the school can be a bit tricky. And so having that officer there, I've noticed in my experience, has been helpful for myself.
As a user of the entrance and exit myself, from time to time, I've noticed that buffered turn lane is really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
The sight lines are much clearer exiting now than they were.
I'm also wondering if there was any way, and I noticed that because I normally go north when I leave here. Is there another way that we could have an extra lane that does not get stuck waiting for people to turn left, but off to the right, like maybe behind the marquee sign, where everybody can there's an extra lane, and then all the northbound people don't get backed up with everybody going south.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that would shorten the amount of time for people to leave the school.
Yeah, that's something we have to speak with school administrators about, you know, whether they'd be willing to look at adding some additional turn. Most of that is probably on on school property. The setbacks here are very wide, so it's probably a little of both, but that's a conversation we could certainly initiate with school administrators. I just took a note. I saw Joe do the same. So.
One of the things that you mentioned that they were talking about the schools down on Miami Valley Road, we noticed during COVID and since COVID, there's a lot more people driving to school or dropping their kids off and picking them up. And down there, especially here, you can get off the road and get into the parking lot. Down there, the parking lots can't seem to facilitate all the drop-offs and all the pickups. So we're finding people parking on the side of the road, staying in the middle of the road in the turning lanes. So we have a project we're working with the school on for that road down to Muddy Brook Circle. We need to resurface it because it's in bad shape, but what improvements can we make to that road? You know, maybe create some permanent parking on the sides of the roads, making sure the sight lines are there. You know, so alleviate some pressure in the parking lots so there's more drop-off room. We're working with the school on that too. So some of the things that the students are picking up on are real life things.
We appreciate the time that you guys have taken to come in and sit with us, and I'm just really happy with the group of students that have put together this whole thing really on their time, on their terms, and I'm just overall just really impressed with everybody here, and I appreciate you guys taking notes down and, you know, keeping this feedback in mind as you move forward, and thank you for coming in.
Yeah, I made several notes here. Everything we heard this morning was really helpful. I heard you say you'd like to see more police presence, or somebody mentioned that somebody you interviewed mentioned more police presence downtown. Crosswalk safety improvements, which I hope we're already addressing, but that's an ongoing subject for us. You know, I made some notes about the problem areas you identified in town, and particularly bike lanes, and this was really, really helpful. I'm really impressed with all the work you guys did to gather this information and present it in such a nice package to us. So thank you. It'll be really helpful for us going forward as we work with the select board and work with the Public Works office and continue our work trying to improve safety downtown.
Thank you.
Thank you.